Today we're going to do a, maybe I started too soon. Today we're going to do a oil filter inspection, and Mr. Matt out here has volunteered to tell us all about the oil filter. And so take it away, Matt.
Hello, thanks Mr. Vic. During an oil change, annual inspection, every time you remove an engine oil system filter, you want to look at the contamination, any particulates, anything that can show any evidence of what inside that engine is doing, any wear, any indications. So as you pull the filter, I have this little system where we drain it, and I've had an oil filter in here drained already, so it's drained. We got to get it open. I'll stick it in a vise.
One thing I might jump in and mention, our aircraft oil filters do have a nice, essentially a bolt put on. So unlike your automotive filters that you've dealt with before, where you have to use a spanner wrench, Champion guarantees that that welded bolt on there basically will never come loose. And so far I've never had one tear apart. They've done pretty well. But of course, Matt's probably got more experience with that, but you know, sometimes then customers put on filters too tight.
Yes. So like Mr. Rick was saying, it's a 1-inch hex. So you just get a 1-inch box, and they come off pretty easy. I have had one too tight that it did bust off that hex spot welds. Then it's just a fight.
And what I do sometimes is, if one's really tight, I'll actually use a combination of a automotive spanner wrench and
yes.
and just
yes.
work up to your disaster slowly.
So, exactly. This particular facility has this type of cutter. This is what's going to cut our can. A little roller here, and a little blade that rotates similar to a can opener at your house. It has a little guide. That'll guide it in there, and it'll screw it down till it contacts, and it'll spin it, and it'll start making marks. As I'm spinning it, I'll give this a little tweak every now and then, and I'll show you what it does. It starts digging in, and the more I go, the more it digs in, and eventually it'll bust through.
Big overgrown pipe cutter.
There you go. Doesn't take long. And there we go. So the top is off. I'll take this out and toss it. This is not needed anymore. Another good thing about this is it's not going to introduce any more contaminants. There's things on the market that could put little specks of aluminum in there, which could give us a false indication. With that being said, I'll talk about it in a second, but this is the paper filter. As you can see, it's got an aluminum top and bottom, an aluminum core, but I'll show you how we get through that. At this facility, we have just a cheap little, not a bread knife, but just something. I've seen box knives, I've seen whatever it takes to get the paper off. And again, whatever you use here, don't allow it to add more contamination.
I usually joke at this point when he gets ready to cut. There is a metal liner. Let me come around the other side. There's a metal liner on the inside of there. So he's going to take his knife down to where he just starts to touch that metal liner.
Correct.
But I do like to joke around a little bit that this knife he's using is one of those ones you see that the guys are selling down at the fair, where the guy that wants you to sell these knives, and oh, by the way, we'll throw in an extra knife into the deal today, 2 knives for the price of 1. But he was just out in the parking lot and sawed the bumper off his car, and he's back in now slicing the tomatoes, showing how good this knife holds its edge.
Exactly.
I actually, as he's still cutting here, I actually had a student one time that I had doing this process, but he didn't realize that there was this, and he ended up cutting all the way. The kid was just in a ball of sweat, and he come back and I says, "You did what?" And he ended up cutting right the whole end off, rather than just trying to cut down to the metal liner that's in there.
I'm also going to show you, there is to combine the 2 ends of a paper filter is this metal strip. I don't cut through that either.
Yeah, right.
I cut up next to it. And like Mr. Vic was saying, you don't want to start cutting into that center aluminum too, because that's going to add aluminum particles.
Oh, right. Yep.
And give you false indications.
And we might end, so oil flows from the outside towards the center.
Correct.
So when we're looking for contamination, we're going to be kind of initially peeling the pleats back a little bit, just
These
getting,
pleats, yeah,
getting an idea there.
because it's going to go that way and out there. Just take a little time. I wouldn't recommend a hacksaw because that could cut that center cone.
Okay,
So once we got it cut, I'm going to pull it apart from the two heads, top and bottom, and it'll come apart except for that metal ring, and then I'll just kind of tear it from there.
so if you you don't want to find the engine bad inside, you pull this out so it flicks all the metal off of it really fast.
You do be careful, yeah. But a lot of times the oil is just enough in there that everything sticks to it. So as we'll pull it,
Oh, it's probably recommended to wear gloves while you're doing this too, because remember our aircraft oils have lead in them, so Matt's going to be stupid now from being getting lead exposure going on here. You know, coming from the 100 low lead fuel.
all right, thanks.
All
So
right.
here's our filter. It's best to go out in sunlight, but as you can see,
Yeah,
this-
I can't see on the very. So let's
this is
walk out
very
to the
clear.
sun. Walk out to the sunlight. What plane was this off of?
53351.
Which was what kind?
It's a 172P model.
Oh, 172. Whoa! Now I really probably can't see anything in the picture, but the idea is he can really look for the little flickers, and
They
that
glisten.
filter looks exceptionally clean.
It's exceptionally clean. It
Yeah.
has 40 hours on the oil. Here's a little bit of carbon down here where my thumb is. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
I know it's carbon. It's got that dark appearance, and it doesn't glisten as I move it around. If you see something next to it, here's a good example.
Yeah, a little bit of.
There's a little bit of particulates in this area.
So Matt, you might talk about what would you do if you did find a little metal, maybe a little more than normal.
Okay, that right there is normal, but like Mr. Vic was saying, what happens if you find big pieces in here with big part numbers on there? One, you got to determine if is it ferrous, is it aluminum, is it brass? What material is it? Well, if it's aluminum, there's certain things in the engine that you know it's going to be. If it's ferrous, what's ferrous? Your piston rings are ferrous, your cam, things like that are ferrous. So you determine what it is. And you can if it's not a huge amount, you can recommend, hey, let's recheck in 10-15 hours and do another filter change and see if it continues. See if there's it's repetitious, if there's a cycle going on, something going on, continuous wear. You can also do an oil analysis.
Oh yeah.
An oil analysis, you take a sample and you send it out to a lab, and they tell you parts per million of everything in that oil.
Or we might get back out of the sunlight here. And then the nice thing, it's nice to have a seasoned mechanic around. So a lot of times when Kurt was doing an inspection on a filter and he found something, he'd call me out. And of course, I've been doing this for 100 years. And I go, oh, that's from your camshaft. Your cam's going bad. You learn to immediately identify. And a lot of the engines do have their common problems. And so the wear off of the cam and the followers has a certain look to it. And guide wear has a certain look. And so,
Correct.
yeah.
Again, like Mr. Vic was saying, it's good to get a few co-workers, other minds in the industry around and talk about, hey, what's the best course of action here? And it could be, hey, recheck in 10 hours, 15 hours. I've had one that most of the pleats were filled, and like, we're rechecking in 5 hours or a couple flights. We're going to recheck and see if it was just an anomaly or if it's going to be a continuous issue. But in a nutshell, that's what you do. They're simple, and I want to ignore this. This is a good telltale sign of what's going on in that engine.
Okay. On now.
And again, if this is a telltale sign, but if it's super oily, the shiny oil and what's left of the oil can sometimes hide the particulates or the contamination. So even at this stage, I may set it on my drain system and let it drain for another day or two, and then all the oil will come off the paper and all the pleats, and then you can get you can see better what's going on. And then after that's done and I'm satisfied, it's time to dispose of it. In this county, as long as it's drained thoroughly, we can just pitch it in the normal trash cans. Check with your local sanitation dumps or whatever it may be, and make sure you can dispose of this stuff. Just like oil cans, when the pilots are done with the oil bottles, they pitch them, which is fine in this area. So, but sometimes it's good to let them drain like this a little further, and it gives you more what's going on there. You can understand more.
Oh, I might mention sometimes in analysis they'll wash them out into a paint filter. You know, if you got a bunch of metal and you want to try to collect it up, they'll wash it with a little solvent. I've seen that something regularly that over at where across the runway, where's the guy who works on the beach aircraft?
Oh, Mike.
Yeah, he likes to wash it. If he sees any metal, wash them in a paint, so he can come running back to you and show you all the metal that came off of your filter.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, I can add that to it here.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll thank Matt for doing a little presentation on our oil filter. Might just tell you one quick little story about our Piper Arrow here. One time, Kurt, we're inspecting the filter, and we did have a pretty good show of obvious cam to cam follower wear. And so we took a look at it, and we decided to go ahead and run it like an additional 10 hours. And the aircraft have been sitting a lot, and so that that can lead to a little bit of corrosion stuff. And so we put a borescope inside the engine, and sure enough, we saw a little bit of cam wear and cam follower wear, but continued to operate it, and it basically stopped. It fixed itself, and we got good service life out of that one after that. Okay, that should complete this video on our oil filter inspection.